So what we're talking about today is building deliciousness into food. And it's not only the spices and the flavorings you add, but choosing quality ingredients. And so I'm going to demonstrate to you how we're going to work with these quality ingredients, prepare them, and put them in the soup. We're going to start with this lovely onion that I have here, which builds a nice pungency, meaning, spiciness in the food, but it also builds a sweetness in the food. And just to show you how to prep it, for this particular dish, we're going to puree this soup, so it doesn't really matter if the onion pieces look really gorgeous, so don't worry about that. But the onion has two sides. Here's this little end right here that had the little green sprout that originally became the onion, and then here is what we call the root end. So when you cut an onion, you want to cut off both of these ends first. And by the way, I'm using a cutting board that has some give in it as opposed to a glass cutting board, because that's more forgiving on your knife. So you cut off both ends, and then you cut through the root end in half, and you're going to take the peeling off the onion, and I save my onion peels and my carrot peels and ends. Sometimes you have to argue with the onion a little bit to get the peeling off. This one's behaving a little bit, but I do save my peelings, and I make stock from that. And I use stocks in soups and sauces, but I also make stock for my dogs and put it in their food, and they love their food even more. So now we have the onion peeled and cut in half. I could do small dice, but we don't have to do that for this recipe. So really, all you're going to have to do is make kind of a rough cut here, big dices instead of small, and that makes it easier and saves time. And here we go. And I am not crying too much from this onion, but if you cry, don't worry about it. In Chinese medicine, they say that's stimulating your liver energy, and it's good for you, and that those tears are actually have antibodies in them that are healthy. So I'm not going to worry about crying over the onions. Here's another quality ingredient going in this soup. This is a Granny Smith apple. It's known for being nice and tart and crunchy, and it works well in this recipe, and interestingly, when you cook it, it becomes sweeter. Now, what makes this even more quality ingredient is that it's organic, which means I am not going to fret about leaving the skin on this when I cook it. So I'm going to leave the peeling on, and that's going to add that much more nutrition. Now, if you want, you can get a little fancy apple corer and core it out. I just as soon not do that. I just cut the apple along the edge and don't get the seeds in, dump that away. And again, like the onion, because this is all going to be pureed anyway, you can cut it in rather large chunks. The star ingredient of our butternut squash soup, and it's actually butternut squash. This is a squash that's available in the fall, and it keeps over the winter for a long time. When we cut into it, you'll see it has a nice deep orange flesh. Deep orange vegetables have anti-inflammatory properties. This tends to be a rather sweet squash. Now, this squash is wrinkly not because it's old, but because I put it in a 350-degree oven for about 20 minutes to soften up the skin. If you've ever cut a butternut squash raw, you'll notice that it can be quite a challenge. The other thing is I chose an organic butternut squash, so again, I don't have to peel the skin. I can use it. But if this weren't an organic squash, I want to show you how beautifully you can peel this. I mean, it just sort of lifts right off. But we're not going to bother doing that. Now, we don't want to put the seeds in the soup, so you're going to slice it right down the middle, and you can use a spoon to extract the seeds and this pulp here. Again, I put that in stocks. It adds a nice sweetness to the stock, but we don't want to have to pulverize these seeds in our soup. And then, again, it doesn't have to be fine chunks, so you can slice it longitudinally and then turn it this way and slice it. It is helpful to have your cuts in rather uniform size so that they'll all cook at about the same time. So you can see these are relatively uniform.